Hi guys, I'm Gasha. Welcome to our coffee times to talk about horror. And today I'm going to be talking to you about all the new brand releases of horror and thriller books coming out during the month of July.
It's coffee time!
Today I have a list of around 34 new releases. These are all horror and thrillers that I have found that I think are interesting for different types of readers. We have middle grade, YA, and adult, so hopefully there's going to be something for everyone today. And sorry again for adding books to your endless TBR piles. If you're new here, welcome to our coffee times. I will talk about the books in publication order, and I also try to keep the synopsis as simple as possible because I always try to avoid as many spoilers as I can. We're going to talk first about a book series, it's a novelette series of 6 installments, and they're all going to be published together. It's called Falling Down, and it's by Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan that got us this Strange trilogy, so I'm really excited to see what they have to bring us now. I've taken a look. These are Amazon releases, and I think every novelette is around 30 pages, so it should be a quick read. A group of mercenaries in a mission end up on a plane that crashes, and they are now isolated in the mountains, and there's going to be a lot more to fear than just being isolated. The team leader and some of the other survivors are trying to figure out how to ask for help, being isolated under the conditions that they are, but then they make an even more gruesome discovery. Shark Night by Errol Stein. This is obviously a middle grade book. They're doing a documentary for the Danger Channel, and they were going to film one of the divers together with the shark, but the diver is unable to go that day, so Carlo takes over and he decides to go into the tank, the water tank, with the shark for this documentary. And they have a shark prepared that is very nice to people and is used to them. But then once he's already in this water tank, they put the shark in, and it is the wrong shark. It is a dangerous one. This one sounds like a lot of fun for summer. The Ones Who Come Back Hungry by Amelinda Berube, and this is a YA horror thriller. A chilling supernatural tale that combines the typical vampire legend with toxic relationships. Jo just lost her sister. Her sister died, and she was her oldest sister. She was very popular, and everybody is going through a really rough time after she died. Jo is one day at the cemetery crying by her sister's grave when she sees actually what looks like her sister. So she sees Audrey in the snow, and when she gets closer, she realizes that she looks like she is still dead, with the signs of the autopsy. So she looks like a corpse, and she's also not breathing. She's decaying and she's very hungry, so Jo decides to sneak her into her room at her parents' house and try to keep her hidden from everyone else. But then she also has to figure out how to feed her sister. I'm really intrigued about this one because I have mentioned before I really need to get to read more vampire books, so this is one that is on my list. Midnight Rooms by Donia Cole, and this is a gothic historical fiction horror. This is a debut historical thriller that is set on a gothic mansion, but also has a psychological horror to it. We are in England in the 1800s, and we follow Arabella's story. So she's an orphan. Her dad was white, her mother was black, and so she would never think that anybody would marry her. But then there comes a proposal. This wealthy guy comes around and asks her hand in marriage, so she accepts, and she's really happy about the future together because he owns a mansion. But when they get to the mansion, she realizes that everything is in a state of decay, and there is a lot of things in the house that are starting to creep her out. She never can leave the mansion unattended. There are some mysterious locked rooms. There's something wrong with the place. She hears things, and I think this is going to be a blend or your typical gothic novel with a little bit of psychological horror to it. So this sounds like a great debut. Werness Reform by Matt and Harrison Query, and this is a horror thriller. This is a terrifying novel about a mysterious camp for troubled teenagers where people go missing. We follow 13-year-old Ben that is sent by the judge to this camp to rehabilitate him as a punishment, and it is a camp for troubled teenagers. When he gets there, he already gets a really weird feeling from the counselors. They seem to be too upbeat and too happy. There seems to be something wrong with this place. As people disappear, some of the kids will try to use their skills, the things that they know how to do really well, to solve the mystery of the place. We all love a camp story during summer, so this is another great release for this month. A Misfortune of Lake Monsters. This is by Nicole M. Wolverton, and this is a horror thriller. So Lemon lives in a really small town, and she comes from a family that have been responsible to basically keep the legend of the monster in the lake alive. So this small town lives from the legend, almost I guess like the Ness monster, and the family kind of fake the existence of the monster, and that has been their job through generations. And Lemon doesn't want to do that. She actually would much rather leave the place and go to college and have her own life, but she is stuck in this small town. But everything will change when a real, actual monster is found in the lake. A Darker Mischief by Derek Millman, and this is YA mystery queer horror. This is a dark academia that takes place in a boarding school, and our main character is a queer character that has to find, his place in this world of really wealthy, rich people. So Kyle gets a scholarship to go to this very fancy boarding school, and everybody starts to make fun of him when he gets there because of his clothes, because he has like a very old phone, and he's having trouble to adapt. He thought going to a new school would mean that he could reinvent himself and, just be who he is. He thought he could leave behind everything else and just, when you move somewhere new, you always have this opportunity or this chance to be who you want to be because nobody knows you, so nobody's gonna judge you by the things that have already happened in your life. He was about to give up and return when he hears about a secret society, and he decides that he wants to make it in. But the things he has to do in order to be accepted by this secret society start to get more and more dangerous. Camp Laner by Sylvester Barzy is another YA horror. This book has a very similar premise to the book that I mentioned before that takes place in a camp. In this one we follow Taylor. She is a black girl, and she is caught shoplifting together with other of her classmates, but the other ones were all wealthy white kids, and so she's the one that gets the most in trouble, and her parents have to pay a fine in order to avoid her going to jail. But in exchange of that, she's gonna have to go to community service, and that is basically she's being sent to a Camp Lanier, and depending on how good your family is or how bad, you get a good job or a really bad job, which the worst jobs are basically cleaning up the trash in the toilets. There are many urban legends and stories about creatures or serial killers around this camp, and Taylor is going to find out quite quickly that some of those legends might actually be true. The Haunted States of America by Ellen Hopkins, and these are short horror stories for middle grade readers. I really love to see like short horror stories from middle grade readers. I think it's a great way to introduce them to horror, and in this book you're going to find 52 short stories by 52 different authors. Honeycomb by S.B. Caves, and this is a horror thriller. They say it's Big Brother mixed with Black Mirror, and we have 6 strangers that participate in a very interesting experiment, and they are isolated while the experiment is taking place. It is a mysterious medical experiment, and one of our main characters is kind of forced to join. Amanda won a very popular reality talent show in the UK, and she was very popular for a while, but then her life started to go downhill. She was mumbling in interviews, she couldn't perform that well anymore. There were pictures of her like heavily intoxicated, leaving clubs and stuff like that. So 6 years later, Amanda wants to fix her career and get back on track. So they suggest that she joins this experiment, and it will put her again on the spotlight. The proposal is they have 6 strangers inside of a house and they are going to monitor them for a whole week. Every single one of them is going to get a pill every day. 5 of those pills are placebos and one of them is the how do you say, the medicine they want to try for the experiment. They have said it doesn't have any kind of side effects, but we also don't know what this medicine does or what is it going to be for. We just know 5 are getting a placebo and 1 is getting the actual pill. And then the questions come, you know, who's taking the pill and what kind of effects does it have? So it turns into, I guess, kind of like a psychological horror thing where everybody thinks they cannot trust each other. Let Gravity Seize the Dead, and this is by Darren Doyle and it's a horror novella. The story is told from 2 different perspectives. One is from 1907 and the other one is from 2007, but the stories are somewhat connected. Beck moves with his wife and his teenage daughters into this cabin in the woods, and the place was previously owned by many people, but there were some that used to live there that left kind of like a message or a mark, and it's all pointing towards something called the Whistler. So my guess is that this is something that lives in the woods surrounding the cabin, and together with the story from the 1900s and the one in 2007, we're going to figure out what actually is the Whistler and how dangerous is it. The Nightmare Box and Other Stories, and this is by Cynthia Gomez, and these are short horror stories. This is her collection debut and it has a lot of infused feminist rage. These are 12 stories centered around ordinary people. We have Latina, queer characters, regular working people, and it's all about their loneliness, their struggles, but also the magic powers they might have. Confessions of the Dead by James Patterson and J.D. Barker, and this is horror. This story takes place in a very small town where the crime rate is 0. That is until a girl mysteriously appears in the town. The sheriff and everybody is interrogating her, but she doesn't want to talk and she doesn't belong to anybody, like nobody recognizes her and they don't know where she came from. And on top of that, they are being called to more and more murder scenes and they're all leading them to a lake. Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle, and this is queer horror. I'm really excited for this. I am going to be reading Camp Damascus in the month of July, which was Chuck's basically horror debut, and I'm really excited and also really excited for the second release. So Misha is a scriptwriter for Hollywood and he has been so far quite successful, but then he is supposed to kill one of the gay characters from the show that he is scripting at the moment, and they want to kill him in one of the season finales just for like to fulfill a quota, and he is having a lot of trouble doing it. So our main character is going to struggle with his past and with everything as he's trying to come up with the decision of will he kill off this character for the algorithm or not. It's Only a Game by Kelsey Yu, and this is YA horror thriller. Marina Chan has tried really hard to protect her identity. She doesn't want anybody to know about her past. But now her gaming team has been offered a great deal. They have been offered to go on a gaming tour, and this is like promoted by a really important gaming company, so she cannot decline. But she knows that she's going to put her identity in jeopardy. The problem is when the tour starts, the creator of the game dies, well, is murdered. So in order for them to avoid being framed for the murder, they can play a game of 4 different rounds and there are certain things that they have to do. Will they manage to do it? Portrait of a Shadow by Mariam Metui, and this is YA horror. My sister Inez is missing, but Mai thinks that everything that's lost can be found. Now the police have already given up when it comes to the investigation. Her parents are also moving on, but she is not ready to let go. So she visits her sister's study and she finds there all of her appliances and her paintings, but there is a specific painting that calls her eye, and for some reason she knows that there is something beneath there, something that she can almost scratch. So she starts kind of retracing her sister's steps, and she realizes that everything is pointing to that painting. Girls Who Burned by M.K. Pagano, and this is another YA mystery thriller. I feel like July is coming with so many YA books, and I am really excited. However, this twisty tale does have enemies to lovers romance, which I know might not be for everybody, but this is exactly the trope that I like. But it also has, of course, a murder. Addie had a fight with her sister, and she said things that are not really nice, and hours later her sister was found dead. Everybody kind of has ruled it out as an accident, but she knows that there is something more to her sister's death. Addie's number one suspect is a guy that is very popular, is very rich, but she has always hated. However, the clues are going to take Addie to look somewhere else, and she's going to do this investigation by herself in order to prove that her sister was actually murdered. Smother Moss by Alyssa Allering, and this is a horror mystery gothic. We're in the 80s in Appalachia, and we follow Sheila, and she's having a hard time because she's being bullied at school. Her mom works very, very long hours at an asylum, and she's also really worried about her little sister. But then a female pair of hikers is brutally murdered on an Appalachian trail, and Sheila and her sister are going to try to find out who is the killer, who is behind the murder. This is a horror that merges kind of like rural gothic with fairy tales, so if this appeals to you, it's also coming out in July. Trespass Against Us by Leon Kemp, and this is YA queer horror. This story is told from a dual timeline. We follow teenagers as they are attending an abandoned school for troubled teenagers, and also we follow them 2 years later when they return to that same place to confront the evil that they awoke. This group of friends decided to visit this abandoned school, probably supposed to be haunted. We all love to visit abandoned places. At least I know I do find them very intriguing. And so 2 years after that visit, they go back and probably talk about everything they found there, how it affected them and stuff. And I do love myself a good dual timeline story, so I'm excited for this one. The Building That Wasn't by Abigail Miles, and this is another horror book. So Everly meets this weird man at the park that claims to be her grandfather, and she's invited to this apartment, which she goes to, like, why would you? Have you ever seen a thriller or a horror movie? Anyway, she goes, and everything there reminds her of something. Like, she feels like she's been there before and she cannot explain it. She feels like she's been there before. She has already been introduced to these people. She feels like she even has memories in that place, but it's not really coming to her. And the more time she spends in this building, the more she feels trapped there without being able to get answers. The White Guy Dies First. This is 13 scary stories of fear and power, and this is YA horror. These are 13 horror stories by 13 authors of color. This is aimed for YA readers, and we have 13 stories by 13 different authors here, and in all of them, obviously, the white guy dies first. I also really like this pink cover. I think it's really cute. So I think this is going to be a great compilation for you guys that love short stories. I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, and this is a horror thriller. Probably very expected since many people do enjoy Stephen Graham Jones. What I really like about this story is that it's actually written from the point of view of a serial killer, so we are inside of his mind. We are in the late 80s, 1989, in Texas, and it's kind of an exploration what it means to be on the outside, living in Texas. So I'm expecting also a lot of like heat and sweat and that kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe, hopefully, and it explores a little bit the slasher movies. We have a killer, and like I said, what really is drawing me into this book is the fact that it is told from the serial killer's perspective and not like from the victim's side. Wings of Sorrow by Yolanda Esfetsos, and this is another horror. Our main character, Thera, inherits a really beautiful mansion from her aunt, but she doesn't really want to go and live there. Her husband, though, convinces her to go, just so that they can be there for a week to clear the state and, you know, get everything in order. But secretly, he hopes that she will fall in love with the place and they will be able to move in there. But when the newlywed couple moves into this mansion that she has inherited, they are kind of trapped and they are no longer able to leave. This house is by a cliffside. There is something there that is changing Thera herself. There are family secrets that need to be uncovered. So this one, even though it's horror, it still feels a little bit like that gothic vibe if you want that for the summer. So Witches We Became by Jill Bagochinsky, and this is a YA queer horror. High school student Nell and her friends are really excited for spring break, and they decide to get a beautiful house, you know, a vacation house on an isolated island. But Nell already goes to this island with a lot of secrets of herself. Plus, there's something really wrong and dangerous in this island. Getting out is going to be a really hard task for Nell. If she wants to get out alive, survive, and help her friends, she's gonna have to confront her own personal fears and her past as well as her secrets. The Drowning House by Cherie Priest, and this is horror thriller. This is a dark story that is kind of focused on the lengths we will go to protect those that we love. And it is a small place, a small town where there was a very violent storm and some residents died, some people went missing, and that forced others to go on search parties. But what they found was a house that apparently is haunted. They will find this sinister house by the beach and they will learn about the past, the person that built the house, and how that house is bringing evil to the town. In the Lonely Hours by Shannon Morgan, this is adult horror gothic mystery. They say this is a modern take on ghost stories, and we follow Edwina. She has inherited a house from a relative that she didn't even know, but she decides to move there together with her daughter Neve. It's not just a house, it's like a big castle, and they did not expect that at all. And when they moved in, they also did not expect that this castle was the home of many ghosts. The Deading by Nicholas Bellaris, and this is a horror sci-fi. They say this is a mix between Under the Dome by Stephen King and The Last of Us. That sounds like a lot of fun just right there. It is about a town that becomes infected by a mysterious ocean-borne contagion. First it was the sea snails washing ashore, then it was smaller animals, until the time came where the virus started affecting the humans. And if you get infected, basically you turn into a dead person. You basically die and come back. So you're basically a zombie. You become what they call a deading. And the fun part about the story, fun, is, you know, it's about mass hysteria, the claustrophobia, people trying to leave to survive, people trying to isolate the infected. Like, it's kind of that vibe, and I'm really excited about this because anything that is compared to The Last of Us, which I love, and Under the Dome by Stephen King, which was a really cool story, which also was a community that was isolated by this kind of dome. Yeah, I think this sounds fantastic. No Road Home by John Fram, and this is a mystery thriller. We follow a young father with a queer son that, you know, he already has to kind of protect from the bigotry of this world. And then he marries, and he marries someone that is very much into religions and Old Testament. And he cannot really predict how bad things are gonna get for him and for his son, Luca. They go to visit the family compound, the whole family are united together, but then the roads are cut, there's nowhere to go, nowhere to run, and then the patriarch of the family, the grandfather, is murdered. And of course, everybody points the fingers to the new member of the family, which is Toby, our young father. Stay on the Line by Clay McLeod Chapman, as well as Trevor Henderson, and this is a novelette. Now, normally I don't really include many novelettes at all in my upcoming book videos, but the two that I've mentioned today, one was by Guillermo del Toro, and this is co-written also by Clay McLeod Chapman, which I also really enjoy. And so I thought also it's great for people that just want something quick for the summer if you guys are very busy or are on holidays. So these might be great stories to just pick up and read very quickly. Also, if you are on a reading slump, these might help. After a small coastal town is hit by a hurricane, the survivors after the devastation decide to all walk to an old payphone that is no longer working, but they want to use it to kind of feel like they're calling their loved ones to say goodbye. But then the phone starts ringing by its own. Our Wicked Histories by Amy Goldsmith, and this is YA horror gothic. Basically, we follow Meg, and she has been invited to a Halloween party. It's not like she really cares about the party or the rumors, because where the party is going to take place, it's a place that is rumored to be haunted in the Irish countryside. But her main focus is to go to this party because the Rank twins are the ones organizing it, and they are very popular, and Meg is trying her hardest to keep her scholarship. However, when they get to the place where the party is going to be hosted, they realize that the mirrors are covered, there is something weird about the place, and Meg is going to realize that not just people but also houses can keep secrets. Will the teenagers be able to make it out alive of this party? The Blonde Dies First by Joelle Wellington, and this is YA queer horror. Devon and Drew are twin sisters, but Devon has felt that she was always on the shadow of her sister because she was always the one that got everything and the talented one. And this is the last summer that they are going to spend together before college, so they decide to do everything to make it the best summer ever. And one of the things they decide to do is to play with a Ouija board. However, what they accomplish is, you guessed it, they woke up a demon. So now they have to deal with the demon. Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning, and this is a horror mystery. Willow's worst nightmare is to be cancelled. She was famous because she was an actress in a very popular sitcom, but after that her life kind of went downhill and she ended up with bad reputation and drinking too much, and so her manager decides to send her to this camp called Camp Castaway to kind of get her into a rehab program almost there. And there is like no phones, no social media, so it's going to be like a reset for her. But soon after she gets there, one of the campers disappears. What is happening, who or what is taking the campers? You'll have to read it to find out. And the last books that I have are two horror middle grades, which I'm also loving to see so much more horror middle grade books coming out. The first one is called It Came From the Trees by Ali Russell. Jenna loves the wilderness and she joins basically the Scouts because she loves to go and camp outside and all of that. But then one day they're going to encounter a very big danger. So this book is actually kind of like a retelling of Bigfoot, if you could consider Bigfoot a classic tale. But anyway, it touches on the legend of Bigfoot, the wilderness, camping, all of that good stuff. The kids will find like footprints and all of that, and they will start an investigation. They think there's a creature around, and like I said, it's all about Bigfoot. And the second middle grade book is called The Creepening of Dogwood House by Eden Royce. This is inspired by Southern Gothic traditions, and especially on a hoodoo practice where they would burn people's hair. Roddy lost his mom and he is sent to live with an aunt that he barely knows, to live in this place, in this house that he never has been before. And on top of that, there's a lot of history, family history that he is not familiar with, and his family is involved with hoodoo, which is something he doesn't know anything about, or the practice of burning hair, but he's now going to learn all about it. And there you have it, you guys. This was my list of 34 horror slash thriller books that are coming out in the month of July. I hope that you enjoyed the list and that you found some books that you want to read and add to your TBR piles. If you have any other releases for the month of July that you think we would love but I have not mentioned, please do leave them in a comment down below. Thank you guys as always so much for watching, and I hope to see you all as always in our next coffee time. Bye!